guys, it is Juanita Coley, the Contact Center Whisperer, and you already know I'm at the NICE headquarters, and I in London. I feel like I always got to say that. I got to say that now, okay? I'm in London, just so y'all know. All right, and I am grabbing an interview with the Graeme Gabriel, okay? And so I'm super excited to be talking to Graeme because y'all know that I love me some workforce management. I am affectionately also known as that WFM girl, right? That's where I got my start. And so I'm super excited to be talking to Graeme. Graeme, thanks so much for indulging me today and putting up with my shenanigans.
No problem.
Tell me a little bit more about what you're doing over at NICE. What's your role, actually?
So my role is Solutions Consultant, so that's in pre-sales. So I'm responsible for when we get someone who's got an interest in WFM, I'll talk to them about their requirements, demonstration, that kind of stuff. So I'm sort of like the how to use the system, helping them supporting the salespeople.
Okay, so tell me, in your day-to-day interactions when people are talking to you about workforce management, what's one of the challenges that you have getting through to people about workforce management?
It's such a mature market at the moment. So when we get to speak to people, they're already aware of what the need is and why they need it for the most part. So it's talking to them about delivering employee engagement using WFM, which is a very different message to when I first started with WFM. It was always about sweat the resource, get the most out of the people you could, but the messaging and the focus on functionality now is very much an employee engagement. So we talk a lot about that, particularly around hybrid and that kind of stuff and flexibility. But then also we talk to a lot of people, and we're seeing this an awful lot now, as digital. We've taken a couple of customers on recently who have absolutely no voice at all. Everything is digital channels. So we're trying to talk to a lot of organizations about being cognitive of the fact that your customers are going to want to contact you through digital channels now rather than voice so much, and being able to plan for those kind of channels as well. So they're the things we talk about.
So I'm super excited about that but I'm gonna put a pin in it. I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna come back to the digital channels. Remind me, Graeme, to come back to the digital channels, because once I get excited, it's a wrap. Okay. So before we go into digital channels and how organizations are planning for their digital channels, tell me, how did you get into the world of workforce management? Typically, I find that people kind of fell into it. So I'm always interested in people's journey to workforce management.
So I think nearly everyone I speak to as well, I fell into WFM because it was an excuse to get off the phones. I'd done about 2 years on the phones. Then I became a team leader in a contact center, and just sort of got speaking to the guy who did the rosters. And I've been doing this a long time. So you talk to people who use Excel. We had a paper roster that he used to fill in. So got involved in it from that way. I worked in a contact center as a planning manager for maybe 3 or 4 years. I was in the contact center about 10 years. And then I left and joined a vendor. And since then, I've been working for multiple, don't judge me, I've worked for multiple WFM vendors.
No judgment. This is a no judgment zone, Graeme.
But to be fair, NICE was the contact center WFM software we implemented in the call center I worked in. So it's my first love.
Yes. So I've used NICE for at a couple of organizations. Do you remember using IEX Total View? Do you remember using that? Version
1.13, and I think we're on 7.4 at the minute. So that was the first one that we implemented.
So I'm dating myself, so I go back, right? So tell me, okay, back to these digital channels. No, I got another question. So when you're talking you started off on the phones, you then got into workforce management. Did you notice, because this is very much similar to what my background was, right? I started off on the phones as an agent. I picked up a user guide for a workforce management solution, and then the rest is really history. I started to work in workforce management, understand RTA, real-time analytics, for the scheduling, forecasting, all of those different things. Started doing the rosters or planning schedules, all of those different things. It wasn't until I really got mature or further along in my career that I understood the discipline behind workforce management. I think most people who get into workforce management from the phones, they kind of get in and start just doing the work, like whether it's updating schedules or whatever it is. So they don't really understand the discipline in and of itself, because it's not like it was a school for workforce management professionals, like you go to school for an accountant or you go to school for a particular thing. Did you notice that as well? Like you kind of got in and just start doing, like creating the rosters, updating these things, and then the discipline knowledge came along? Or was your path into workforce management learning curve different?
No, it's the same. So we were planning in Excel, just basically doing what the guy before I had the job did. Then we implemented IXWFM off the back of that. So again, working in the context of what you know within the system. It wasn't until I left the call centers in and worked for a vendor, I got involved with, I used to do training. So I got involved with it. Have you heard of the call center school?
Yes.
Yeah, so I got involved with that and I got accredited to train that. So now I was going out training the principles of WFM, regardless of the system that you're using. And that was a proper eye-opener, from thinking you know what you're talking about to actually working out, actually, I can now see the core and where a lot of the functionality in the system is drawn from. It's the principles that underlie that, where all the WFM systems pull their experience from.
Do you see, as being a solutions consultant, can you usually tell the difference right away who you're talking to, whether you're talking to a user of multiple vendors and they're asking very feature-rich questions versus people who have more discipline, principle knowledge, who are asking more discipline questions? Can you tell the difference in conversation a lot of times?
Yeah, you can. And we were talking about this internally the other day. When we speak to prospects, it's so much easier to sell or to engage with someone who understands the detail of how WFM works, because they ask you the right kind of questions, and that means we can give them the responses that really show the depth of the functionality of the product that we've got. It's much harder trying to speak to people who don't really understand the value of WFM. We had one recently where they're saying, you're doing a demo for us, we haven't really decided whether we need it. And we were like, well, it's the first thing you should buy in any contact center. The first question you ask is how many people I need, not what size monitors I need, or that it's how many people. So it has to be the first thing. So yeah, you can pick it up in the responses to the questions that you ask. Particularly shrinkage is a good one to ask about what percentage shrinkage you're using. You can sort of gauge from there what figure they give you, whether they really understand what shrinkage is.
Yeah, no, that's so good. That is so good, because which is why I'm such a huge person on understanding the discipline, right? Like, as a practitioner, I think you have to really understand the discipline, because what ends up happening, and I see this all the time, is that organizations get sold on features, right? So they get sold on features and like, oh, that's cool, that's neat, that's awesome. And it's like, but you don't have the infrastructure. Your business doesn't support that feature. So while it's a nice feature to have, you'll likely never use that because you don't do that. Case in point, let's just talk about shift bids for an example. Oh, so a solutions consultant or salesperson will come in and show them this super sleek interface, super sleek, nice feature around shift bids, or, things like that. And yeah, that looks cool. You could do shift swaps and all that stuff, but your organization does not do shift. You don't do shift bidding, right? So while it's a really cool feature, love it, if you don't really understand the discipline and where these different features fall in what I call the core four. So I'm not a shameless plug at all. I'm releasing a book next year, so you get to hear it here first. I haven't even told anybody, Graeme. All right, so I'm releasing a book next year called The Core Four, and it's really understanding the WFM discipline around workforce management and where those different features or things fall into the life cycle, what I like to call the WFM life cycle. Because to your point and what you're saying around people who understand features versus people who understand the discipline, it's much easier to make an educated decision then, because they're asking the right questions.
And yeah, it's our role in pre-sales, but so we lean a lot on discovery to understand what the customer's trying to achieve. And when you're demonstrating and talking to customer features, try and focus on the stuff that's going to address their issues today. But also, you've got to be cognizant of the fact that you're going to prove to them we've got functional headroom in the system, that wherever they go strategically, they're not going to have to swap out the tool that they've got, our tool. They'll be able to grow within the tool that we've got, which is really comforting. And my only boast is the call centre I used to work in was a subsidiary of British Airways. We implemented in the 90s. They're still using it today as well. So that's a really good example of an organisation that keeps upgrading and keeps growing into the functionality that we deliver for them.
I'm curious, as a fellow WFM practitioner, what is your favorite part of workforce management?
So probably scheduling. And that's another thing we've got to try and do. We're trying to convince everyone to say schedule instead of scheduling. That's one of the goals that I'm trying to do.
Let me see it. Say it again, Graeme.
Scheduling.
Scheduling.
Yeah, I did, because we say over the UK, we say scheduling, you say scheduling. I did a training course in Spain once. I had the whole room trying to say schedule instead of schedule. It was hilarious with Spanish accents.
Schedule.
Yeah, schedule. There you go. So while you're in London,
schedule.
Say schedule, because everyone understands what you mean. So scheduling probably is most important. But from the job that we do, the role that we do here, the best bit about it is talking to other people that do WFM, because it's a very intimate environment, and when you're around it for a long time, you get to know lots of people in different, because everyone just moves to different planning functions, so you create your own little community. So it's the people side of it. So I suppose scheduling involves people as well, so probably people.
Scheduling. Okay. All right. So CXI right, is this whole infrastructure that we're talking about at NICE. I've been hearing that. I've been hearing that. I internally been talking to you guys about CXI. Tell me, from your perspective, where does WFM fit into the CXI infrastructure?
So fundamentally, from a CXI perspective, we're talking to people about digital plays a massive role, because obviously it opens up the avenue for different digital channels, but also there's a lot of self-serve and artificial intelligence. So what that means is, from a WFM perspective, when a customer really needs to speak to a person in an organization, those kind of instances are happening, they're rarer and rarer, so they actually become heightened in their importance. So when a customer, they can self-serve now for 60 to 70% of what they do. When they actually need to speak to somebody, they need to speak to somebody, that is there when they need them, but also that is motivated to speak to them. So motivated in a way where they're not occupied too much. We talk about occupancy, where they're not too busy, so they feel motivated to help the customer. They've got all the tools around them, and that can include part of the CXI stuff about robotics and robotic assistance and all that kind of stuff, knowledge management. But the fundamental bit, they're really moments of truth when they get through. And in WFM, we're the people who are providing the resource to those moments.
Graeme, I could hug you right now. I could just give you a virtual hug. I've been saying that. People have been asking me, hey, Juanita, do you think workforce management is going to go away as we do more digital transformation or digital, have digital lines and channels and AI and all that stuff? I've been saying no. In fact, I think it becomes more important. You think about, and when you think about digital channels like your WhatsApp, your socials, your chatbots, your AI, and all of those different things, self-serve. Think about how challenging it is today to schedule for and forecast for. Do I say forecast that way too here?
Forecast, fine, yes.
Okay. Forecast for voice channels. Now mix into that video, social, these digital channels. Workforce management and scheduling of those type of resources and forecasting for those type of resources become that much more complex, right? Because you have an individual that can move from chat to voice to video in one interaction, and many times you're forecasting fractional interactions, fractional pieces of that interaction. So the forecasting changes as well as the scheduling of that resource changes, because it may not be the same person in all instances. I may start off on chat with Susie and need to move to, let's say, telehealth, need to move to video to be on video with a nurse practitioner or something, and it's a completely different person. So the forecasting and scheduling of that is going to be completely different in most cases, and much more complex interaction, individual and system that can handle that. So I could definitely hug you. I've been talking about that for some time. So yeah, that's cool. So that actually leads me into my question that I was going to ask you about the digital transformation, these digital channels. When we think about digital transformation and these embodying these organizations, embodying these various channels, what do you think is next?
It's a really good question. I think from what I'm seeing, there's a lot more naivety in digital in contact centers than perhaps we're given that we think. We speak to a lot of organizations not really doing digital. I've been speaking to some large organizations, banking organizations, that are just starting to do web chat. So I think our role is to actually do a lot more education for people, and understanding the relationship between introducing digital channels is one thing, but also elevating to make sure WFM supports that. So the way we talk about those moments of truth, because you can have a really slick website where people can interact with you, but service can still fall down when an agent's involved, based on perhaps you're not forecast accurately or anything like that. So it's very much around supporting the digital journey for organizations, and our role now is much more consultative in the sales process. We're trying to help people and say, this is what everyone else is doing. You talked about mixing channels and stuff. There's loads of research out there that says customers still eventually will want to speak to somebody that's always going to be there. So helping people understand the balance. You can't digitize everything. There's always going to be a requirement for people to talk to people, and they're really, really important. That, along with hybrid working and the flexibility around scheduling in a hybrid working environment. I've been doing demos, did one the other week, where the customer was asking, could we book car park spaces using the WFM tool? So because they've got limited parking space now. We're also talking to another organisation about some agents who are now in the call centre because of the pandemic have never actually worked in a call centre. They've just worked handling contact, but they've never actually physically been in a contact centre. And the culture of a contact centre is very, very unique in the working environment.
I love this, man. We got to do a part 2 of this conversation. One of the things I love that you just talked about is, when we talk about what's next, is how organizations are still very naive to digital transformation. And I think there is a big education that still has to happen, that while, yes, we may have the technology to go digital, we still have to have the infrastructure, the support to support that digital. Because just because I can pop up web chat and you have this sleek interface does not mean I have the support in the background to support it, right? And so that means that, again, when we talk about organizations that are going digital and they're saying, okay, we're going to have web chat, we're going to have all of these different channels that allow a customer to maybe self-serve or get what they need, I still need to have that support, right? What workforce management looks like on that, supporting that on the back end. And I don't think that is a big conversation. We're just talking about the front end of, can we do it? And if the answer is yes, then it's like, okay, cool, let's do it. But then what we're seeing on the back end of that is poor service.
And I think that's from a WFM perspective, and I've spoken about this a lot around, I saw some research from Capgemini. They were talking about 20 to 40% of an inbound contact center volume is driven by failures in other parts of the business, like the back office. So from a WFM perspective, don't just think about WFM for front office, think about WFM across every aspect of the organization, because if you don't address it here, you're going to actually feel the pain up front in the contact center. So there's all of those kind of things. And that's another discussion we have with lots and lots of people. The most recent sale we've just done is to an organization it's a building society. So it's very much back office focused, because there's a recognition there. People are calling in 2 or 3 times over an issue that's not been because of a lack and a failure in another part of the business.
That's so good, so good. A lot of times when people think about workforce management, they're thinking about it just from the phone perspective or, chat perspective, but they're not thinking about back office processes that drive those interactions, because your failure of resource planning from a claims department or whatever, those back office sending the faxes out, right? You didn't plan that. You only had one fax machine or two fax machines, but you have a whole department of claims that need to send out faxes. Let's say that's the case. You didn't plan. So now your faxes are behind, which is driving a call because, my hurricane policy, I've been waiting for my roof to get repaired, right? So now I'm calling in and creating an interaction, when if the back office process was a little bit better and resource managed, then I would need to be calling in as a consumer. You can see I'm feeling a little some way about my roof. We have hurricanes in Florida. So so that's my soapbox on that. Okay, so I know that you all have an event. You have an event coming up. What is the name of the event again, Graeme?
It's Nice User Group, but we call it the NUG, which is
NUG.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me more about. Tell me more about Nice User Group.
So Nice User Group, we do quarterly. Well, since the pandemic, we've been doing quarterly online sessions, but coming up on the 28th of November in York, which is in Northern England, we've got our first face-to-face for a long time. At the moment, we've got about 85 people registered, and it's basically other people from a WFM perspective. One of the reasons, the way we position it as well, is no salespeople allowed. You're not allowed to sell anything in these. It's all about a group of like-minded WFM people in a room, sharing best practice, talking about their experience. And because it's our Nice User Group, we can really get down in the nitty-gritty of the functionality of the system. So they're really, really good fun as well. So we have lots of people.
Is this open for is it open for all Nice users?
Yeah, so we try and get as many people to come as possible. We're really pleased with 85. I think previously we've had over 100, but because there's been challenges over industrial action on trains and stuff over here, I don't know if you've been aware of that. It's been a challenge, but we're really pleased. We have 85 people in a room, and we're just going to do WFM all day.
Will it be live as well, or will it just only be in person?
We're just doing it in person. So we've got lots of sessions around. We're doing some presentational style, but probably about 60% of the day is going to be discussion groups where we're going to give subjects and let people talk and share with the rest of the room. So we're really conscious of the fact they've got to be really interactive, because the way you do them when you're doing them remote is very much about presentational style. But if you've got people in a room, you can actually mix people up and get them to talk to people.
So because I'm nosy, what are some of the sessions y'all are going to be talking about? You hear me whispering, like, tell me a secret.
So we've got an Ask the Expert session. So we're basically, as people have been registering, they've been submitting questions. Well, what I've done is distill those questions into topics. And we're going to get a table. Each table is going to have their own topic to discuss. And then they're going to swap topics, and we're going to ask for feedback. Because the whole point is, experts in the room is not just us standing up at the front doing the presenting, it's the people in the room who are doing the job as well. So that's one thing we've got to do. We've got another one where we're going to walk through the WFM process and get people to talk. They're going to rate themselves on how good they are at forecasting, then discuss in their group, and then re-rate themselves afterwards to see whether their perception of how good they are is different to where they actually are when they've spoken to other people and stuff like that.
That's going to be, I feel like I need an invite or something,
And York is very nice as well. It's a very old city.
I feel like I need an invite. Somebody has to make that happen. But okay. So last question, I'm going to let you go because I could talk to you forever, Graeme. What do you wish people knew about what you did or workforce management that people never ask?
I think the understanding of how workforce management, what we do, ripples through every part of the organisation. So it's a bit like, whack-a-mole, when you play that game where you have to hit a young person who goes to theme parks. When you squeeze one performance indicator, and that can be in WFM or in the contact centre, something else, a consequence pops up. And to understand that everything is integrated in the contact centre ecosystem, but WFM is probably the function that touches more parts of that than any other function in the contact centre.
Yeah. I love that. Like I said, I'm releasing a book next year, and it's the core four, and it's literally talking about that. You know,
Good.
helping people to understand that. So, I'll make sure I send you a copy.
Excellent. That'd be good.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Graham, for indulging me, putting up with my shenanigans today. This has been a fantabulous interview. Thank you so much for talking with me today.
No worries, Dave. Lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. All right, guys, until next time, see y'all soon. Bye.